Yaron Daniels didn't think twice. He dropped his toolbox, kicked off his work boots, and dove straight into the freezing lake. The scream had frozen him for half a second. Then he saw her, a woman thrashing, gasping, pulled under by her coat and the weight of panic. The shore was nearly empty, save for his 5-year-old daughter, Vienna, standing on the grass, clutching her stuffed bunny and yelling, "Daddy!" The water hit him like concrete, cold, crushing. But he didn't stop. He swam hard, reaching her just as she sank again. Her eyes were wide, terrified, and she barely had the strength to reach for him. He grabbed her around the waist and kicked toward the shore. "I've got you," he gasped. She choked, coughed, and held onto him like her life depended on it, which it did. When he pulled her onto the grass, Yaron collapsed next to her, panting. Vienna ran over, tears streaking her cheeks. "Daddy, is she okay?" "I think so," he managed. The woman rolled onto her side, coughing up lake water. Her drenched hair clung to her cheeks, and her designer coat, now soaked and ruined, hung off her like dead weight. "I'm fine," she rasped. "I think—" Yaron looked at her, eyebrows furrowing. She didn't look like someone who belonged here. Her watch glinted under the sun, the kind of thing you only saw in magazines. Her heels, now lying in the grass, were the kind that cost more than his monthly rent. "You sure you're all right?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." She sat up, brushing wet strands from her face. "I didn't expect the dock to be that slippery." Vienna hugged her bunny tighter. "You fell in like a splash." The woman blinked at her, then smiled gently. "Thank you for the commentary, sweetheart." Yaron stood and offered her a hand. "Let's get you to my truck." "You're freezing." She hesitated only a second before taking it. Her hand was ice cold in his. "I'm Gabriella Soren." Yaron Daniels, that's Vienna." Gabriella's eyes softened as she looked at the little girl. "You have a beautiful name, Vienna." "Thanks." "I drew a bunny in the dirt while Daddy was fixing the sign." She frowned. "Then I heard you scream." Gabriella's lips wobbled slightly, but she nodded. "You saved me," she said softly to Yaron. He shrugged. "Would have done it for anyone." They walked to his old pickup, and Gabriella climbed in, shivering. He cranked the heat and handed her a flannel from behind the seat. "Sorry, it's not fancy," he said. "This is perfect," she said, wrapping it around herself. He buckled Vienna into her booster seat and turned to Gabriella. "Want me to call someone for you?" "No," she said quickly. "I'll call a car later. I just need to warm up." She wouldn't meet his eyes. "All right," he said, starting the engine. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the hum of the heater the only sound. Gabriella's eyes kept drifting to the backseat. "She's sweet," she said. "She's everything." A few more minutes passed before Gabriella asked quietly, "What do you do?" "When you're not saving drowning women." That made him laugh. "Handyman, fix signs, paint fences, whatever pays." She was quiet again. He glanced at her. "What about you?" "I run a company," she said. "Oh yeah, what kind?" She hesitated, then said, "Real estate." "Big buildings, mostly commercial." He nodded. "That explains the heels." She laughed, and it was warm and real. Yaron parked outside a small cafe and turned to her. "You warm enough to eat? I know the owner." "I'll get you something hot." Gabriella looked at him like she hadn't expected kindness to keep going past the lake. "I'd like that." Inside, Yaron ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup for Vienna and 2 coffees. He didn't miss the way Gabriella wiped at her eyes once he turned to grab napkins. "You okay?" he asked, sliding into the booth across from her. She nodded. "I just didn't think today would go like this." "Me neither," he said. "But hey, you're alive, that's something." Gabriella stared at him like she was trying to figure something out. "You didn't ask who I was." "Most people do when they recognize me." "I don't recognize you," he said honestly. That seemed to surprise her. "I'm not really up on the whole rich people who own things scene," he added with a grin. She laughed again, this time with a sparkle in her eyes. "That's honestly kind of nice." Vienna slurped her soup. "You're pretty," she said to Gabriella. "Thank you, sweetheart. So are you." Yaron watched them, something tugging in his chest. He hadn't felt this kind of warmth in a long time, since before Vienna's mom left, since the world got heavy. After the meal, Gabriella stepped outside to call a car. She came back in a moment later. "My driver's 10 minutes out," she said. "But I'd like to see you again." Yaron blinked. "You sure? You saved my life, and you didn't ask for anything. That's rare." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not exactly. Your world." I know, she said softly. That's what I like about you. She stepped in close and kissed his cheek. Maybe dinner next time, my treat. Yaron chuckled. You mean like real dinner? With white tablecloths and menus that don't have pictures, Gabriella's eyes gleamed. Exactly. He glanced at Vienna, who was busy trying to make her bunny drink from a sugar packet. All right, he said. We'll figure it out. As she left, Yaron stood there by the window watching her black car pull away. Vienna tugged his arm. Daddy. Yeah, is she a princess? He smiled. Something like that. And he didn't know it yet, but that moment jumping into the lake without thinking was about to change everything. Yaron didn't expect to see her again. He figured it had been one of those moments, a mixture of adrenaline, relief, and gratitude. People said things when they were shaken. And someone like Gabriella, wrapped in her tailored world of power suits and chauffeured cars, probably didn't have room for a guy who spent his mornings patching drywall and his afternoons picking up glue sticks from kindergarten floors. So when she showed up at the community center 3 days later, Vienna's tiny pink backpack swinging from one shoulder as she walked in like she belonged there, he almost dropped the drill in his hand. I hope I'm not interrupting something important, she said, stopping just inside the doorway. Yaron blinked at her. Depends. Are you here to buy the building? She raised a brow. Would that be a problem? He set the drill down and wiped his hands on his jeans. Depends on what you do with it after. I was joking, she said, but her voice softened. Sort of. Vienna spotted her from across the room and ran over. You're the water lady, Gabriella crouched down. I guess I am. You didn't drown, so Daddy says that's good. Excellent news, she said, offering a solemn nod. Yaron crossed his arms. So. What brings you here? I wanted to see where you work, she said. Not just the lake version of you, the real one. You drove all the way out here just for that. I was in the area. He gave her a look. Fine, she admitted. I wasn't in the area. I made time. He nodded toward the folding chairs stacked against the wall. Well, this is it. Not exactly awe-inspiring, but the coffee's decent if you like it burnt. I didn't come for the coffee, she said, stepping closer. I came because I haven't stopped thinking about you. Yaron's heart thudded once hard. She added quickly, not in a weird way, just, you're different. Because I jumped in a lake. No, she said. Because you didn't ask for anything after. He looked down. Not really my thing. Expecting things. I noticed. Vienna tugged Gabriella's hand. Do you want to see my drawing? Gabriella glanced at Yaron, then smiled. I'd love to. They sat together on the carpet while Vienna pointed out every crayon animal she'd created. Yaron watched from a few feet away, something twisting in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Not since he'd stopped letting himself imagine anyone fitting into their life. Once Vienna rejoined the other kids for snack time, he motioned Gabriella toward the hallway. You sure you want to be here? He asked. This isn't exactly your world. I never said it had to be, she replied. But maybe I want to see what it's like. He studied her, unsure how to read someone who wore diamond stud earrings but crouched on a preschool rug like she'd done it 100 times. She broke the silence first. I have a gala tonight, Midtown. Wall-to-wall egos and six-figure wine. Sounds exhausting. It is. Want to come, he stared. To a gala, you'd clean up well. I can have a suit sent over. He shook his head, half laughing. I don't have time to play dress up in someone else's world. It's not playing, she said. It's dinner, with people I don't like, and one I might. Yaron leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You're serious. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. There was something about the way she stood there in heels that didn't belong anywhere near a linoleum floor and a coat that probably cost more than a month's mortgage, but still looked at him like he mattered. Who'd watch Vienna? I can have a driver pick you both up. She can hang out in the guest suite with my housekeeper's daughter. She's 6. They'd get along. He hated how tempting it sounded, but he'd learned the hard way that temptation came with strings. And Gabriella looked like she owned a lot of strings. I'll think about it, he said. She smiled. That's all I'm asking. She left a card on the table by the door before slipping out. It wasn't until later, when he picked it up, that he noticed the handwritten note on the back. You jumped into the water for me. Let me return the favor. That night, after Vienna was asleep, Yaron sat at the kitchen table staring at the card like it had teeth. The idea of showing up at some glittering high-rise event made his skin itch. But then he remembered the way Gabriella knelt to see Vienna's drawing, the way she didn't flinch at the chaos of snack time or the sound of a dozen kids screaming across the gym. He didn't know what game she was playing, if any. But if someone like her could walk into his world without blinking. Maybe he owed it to himself to see what hers looked like. The next afternoon, a garment bag arrived at his door with a note that simply read, "No pressure. But I hope you say yes." Vienna ran her fingers over the smooth fabric. "Is this for a prince?" Yaron looked at the suit. "Maybe just a guy trying to be brave," he said. He didn't realize until he was standing in front of the mirror, buttoning the jacket, that it had been years since he'd seen himself in anything that didn't have paint stains or frayed seams. When the sleek black car pulled up, Gabriella stepped out first. "You clean up nicely," she said, eyes flicking over him. He opened the back door for Vienna, who climbed in, already chatting with the other little girl inside. "I can't believe I let you talk me into this," he said as they slid into the back seat. Gabriella glanced over at him. "You didn't need much convincing." He looked out the window as the city lights started to rise around them. "Maybe not." She reached over and took his hand. And for the first time in a long time, Yaron Daniels didn't feel like the world was something he had to fix. For once, it felt like maybe, just maybe, it was fixing itself. The moment they stepped out of the car, Yaron felt the difference in gravity. The gala was being held in a glass-walled rooftop ballroom, the kind of place where the skyline bled into the stars and conversations floated like perfume. A valet whisked the car away before he could second-guess his choices, and Gabriella slipped her arm through his with practiced ease. "Just look at me if it gets overwhelming," she said under her breath. "I'm the only one here who matters tonight." He didn't reply, but he let her guide him toward the entrance where a wall of cameras flashed like lightning. A man with a clipboard nodded as they passed. Gabriella didn't break stride. Yaron focused on not tripping over the marble steps. Inside, the room glittered. Chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from the ceilings. A string quartet played something elegant in the corner. Waiters carried trays with appetizers that looked like modern art. Guests wore fabrics that shimmered like oil slicks under the lights. Gabriella leaned in. "You're doing great." He scanned the room. "Do they all know who you are?" "Most," she said. "That's why I invited you." Before he could ask what she meant, a man approached. He was older, with slicked-back silver hair and the posture of someone used to being the center of attention. "Gabriella," he said, kissing both her cheeks, "we missed you at the board dinner." "I had other plans," she replied smoothly. "Yaron, this is Malcolm Erickson. He runs half the financial sector in this city." "Malcolm, this is Yaron Daniels." Malcolm's eyes flicked to Yaron's shoes. "Pleasure." Yaron nodded. "Likewise." Gabriella redirected the conversation before it could turn into a pissing contest. Malcolm was just awarded a Lifetime Achievement honor. "He's been in this game longer than either of us have been alive." Malcolm chuckled. "You always did have a sharp tongue." His gaze lingered on Yaron, "and an interesting taste in company tonight." Yaron opened his mouth, but Gabriella stepped between them. "I think you've had enough champagne," she said lightly. "We'll catch up later." She pulled Yaron toward the bar. "You didn't have to do that," he muttered. "I did," she replied. "You don't owe anyone an explanation for standing next to me." He studied her face. "You deal with that often, more than you know." The bartender handed her a flute of something sparkling and set a whiskey in front of Yaron without asking. Gabriella must have arranged it ahead of time. He took a sip. "This place is unreal. You think this is impressive," she said. "Wait until dessert." They wandered the perimeter of the room. Yaron kept his hand in his pocket, resisting the urge to tug at his collar. He noticed the way Gabriella's expression shifted depending on who they passed, warm with some, unreadable with others. She was navigating a labyrinth while making it look like a dance. They paused near the balcony doors. The view outside was staggering, a sea of city lights stretching beyond the horizon. "You used to this?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not really. I learned to pretend early." He turned to her. "What were you before all this?" She glanced down at her glass. "The daughter of a single mom who cleaned hotel rooms. I didn't grow up with this world. I fought my way into it." Yaron blinked. "Didn't expect that." "Most don't," she said. "They see the clothes, The buildings with my name on them. They don't see the part where I ate cereal with water because we couldn't afford milk. He leaned closer. I see it now. She looked up at him, something unguarded in her eyes. You're the first person I've brought to one of these who hasn't tried to impress anyone. I wouldn't know how, he said. Exactly. A voice interrupted them. Gabriella, darling, I need your opinion on something criminally expensive. A woman in a floor-length navy gown approached, holding a velvet folder. Gabriella hesitated. Give me 5 minutes. Yaron nodded. Go. I'll be fine. She disappeared into the crowd with the woman, and Yaron turned back to the skyline. He was only alone for a minute before someone else found him. You're the guy who jumped into the lake. Yaron turned. A man with sharp cheekbones and a smug expression stood there, sipping a cocktail. You know about that. Everyone does. Gabriella's head of PR made sure of it. Great narrative, mysterious working-class hero saves the CEO of Soren Holdings. Very poetic. Yaron frowned. I didn't know it was a story. Everything's a story, the man said, especially when it comes with good optics. Yaron set his drink down. Who are you? Her ex. The man extended a hand like they were old friends. Julian Hart. We were engaged for about 3 months. Didn't stick. Yaron didn't take the hand. Julian didn't seem bothered. She's always had a soft spot for long shots, but they usually don't last. She tell you that? Yaron asked. Julian smiled. She doesn't have to. Gabriella reappeared before Yaron could reply. She didn't acknowledge Julian. Come with me, she said, gripping Yaron's wrist. They stepped into a side hallway lined with framed architectural renderings. I didn't know he'd be here, she said, voice tight. He wasn't invited. He said you were engaged. Briefly, she said. He was charming until he wasn't. Yaron waited. He tried to buy controlling shares in my company behind my back. When I confronted him, he said it was for my own good. I ended it that night. Yaron exhaled. He thinks I'm a phase. She met his eyes. Do you? No, he said. But I don't know what this is yet. Her voice dropped. Neither do I, but it's not pretend. He nodded slowly. They stood there in silence, the thrum of the gala faint behind them. Then she stepped forward and pressed her lips to his. It wasn't tentative. It was a claim. When they pulled apart, her breathing was uneven. Come back with me, not to the party, to my place. And Vienna, he asked. She's already asleep in the guest room. My housekeeper's staying overnight. She's safe. Yaron hesitated, then took her hand and followed her out into the night. The penthouse was quiet, but not cold. Gabriella's apartment overlooked the city, a wall of glass framing the skyline as if it were a living painting. She slipped off her heels by the door, her bare feet whispering against the marble. Yaron followed her in, still stunned by the contrast between the world he'd left behind and the one he now stood in. He looked around without speaking. The place was elegant, restrained even, not ostentatious but deliberate. Everything had weight, meaning. It felt like her. She disappeared briefly down the hall and returned in a soft robe, her hair damp. Vienna's still asleep, she said. She and Leela watched a movie and passed out before it ended. Yaron nodded. She's good with new places, brave like that. Gabriella leaned against the arm of the couch. She takes after you. I'm not sure that's entirely a good thing. You keep saying that like it's some kind of warning, she said, folding her arms, but I don't scare easy. He walked to the window, the city glowing beneath them. You live like this every day. I work like this every day. Living is different, he turned. So what is this? Between us, a break from all that? No, she said. It's the only thing that's felt real in months. They stood there, the silence stretching but never awkward. He crossed the room and sat beside her, knees grazing. I've been thinking about something, he said. You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been there that day? I try not to, she said, but it's crossed my mind. I still can't figure out why you were even at that lake, she hesitated. I was supposed to meet someone. A potential investor. He bailed last minute. I stayed, needed the quiet. You don't seem like the type who gets left waiting. I wasn't waiting for him, she said. I was waiting to feel something, anything. I'd been running on autopilot for too long. He studied her. And then you fell in. And then you pulled me out. Yaron leaned back, exhaling. You ever think maybe we were both meant to be there? I don't believe in fate, she said, but I believe in choices, and I chose to come back. He glanced at her. You said you never brought anyone to those galas. Not someone I cared about. He froze. You care about me. I care about what we could be, she said. I care about how Vienna looked at me like I wasn't a stranger. I care that you didn't need a reason to save me, you just did. He looked down at his hands. I've never been part of something that didn't come with a cost. Neither have I, she said. But maybe this time we split the bill. He laughed quietly. You always talk like you're negotiating. I'm not, she said. I'm asking, do you want this? Because I do. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers wrapping around hers. I want it. I just don't know what it looks like. Then we build it, she said. One piece at a time. They sat like that for a long moment, the city humming outside, the gravity between them shifting into something steady. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Gabriella started spending weekends in Yaron's neighborhood, not just in the penthouse, but at the corner bakery where Vienna liked the cinnamon knots, at the park where she learned how to fly a kite, at the community center, where Gabriella quietly funded a new arts program without putting her name on anything. Yaron came to her world too, not just as an accessory but as a partner. She brought him to meetings not as a showpiece but because she trusted his judgment. He had a way of seeing through people, of cutting through the noise. Her board hated it. She loved it more than she admitted. One afternoon, Gabriella found Yaron in the middle of repainting the apartment walls without asking. You didn't like the eggshell white. It looked like a hospital, he said. I figured you could use a little warmth. She tilted her head. You're really not afraid of any of this, are you? He shrugged. I'm afraid of screwing it up, not of trying. She walked over and took his hand, streaked in paint. You're not going to screw it up. Promise? No, she said. But I'll be here even if you do. That night, they took Vienna to a rooftop garden that Gabriella had never known existed. One of Yaron's old clients had built it on top of a brownstone downtown. They ate grilled corn and homemade peach cobbler under strings of fairy lights. Gabriella let herself swing on an old wooden bench, laughing with Vienna, barefoot in the grass. Yaron watched them. Something settled in his chest, something quiet and enormous. Later, when Vienna was asleep in the backseat, Gabriella turned to him as he drove. I've been trying to figure out how to say this without it sounding like a press release. He raised a brow. Let me guess, you want to restructure our emotional merger. No, she said. I want to marry you, he blinked. That's not subtle. I don't want subtle, she said. I want you. I want Vienna. I want the mess and the noise and the mud on the floor and the burnt toast. I want all of it. He pulled the car over, heart pounding, turned to her fully. You mean it? I've never been more sure of anything. He leaned across the console, kissed her slow. I don't have a ring, he said. I don't need one. Then yes, he whispered. God, yes. They were married 3 weeks later, no reporters, no headlines. Just Gabriella in a dress she picked that morning, Yaron in a shirt he ironed himself, and Vienna standing between them holding a bouquet bigger than her face. They said their vows in a garden behind the community center. Gabriella's mother flew in, crying through the whole thing. Yaron's brother held Vienna's hand when she got shy during the photo. Afterward, they danced under a canopy of lights, surrounded by people who didn't care about last names or net worths. Just love. As the night deepened, Gabriella leaned into Yaron's chest, her voice barely audible. I never knew peace could look like this. He kissed her hair. Welcome home. It was the kind of morning that could only be described as golden, the kind where the light filtered through the linen curtains and painted the hardwood floors in long, quiet brushstrokes. Gabriella stood barefoot in the kitchen, her robe slipping off one shoulder as she flipped through a folder of architectural drafts beside the espresso machine. The scent of roasted beans and fresh strawberries hung in the air, and the faint sound of Vienna singing to her cereal bowl echoed from the breakfast nook. Yaron walked in with his sleeves rolled up and a pencil behind his ear. Is it weird that I actually like grocery shopping with a list now? Gabriella looked up with a grin. It's only weird if you start alphabetizing the pantry. Already did, he said, placing a bag of oranges on the counter. Color-coded by ripeness. She laughed and reached for an orange, peeling it slowly. You make domesticity dangerously appealing. You married a man who owns 3 tool belts and can fix a sink without calling anyone. You knew what you were getting. He leaned in, brushing his lips across her temple. Besides, I like this, all of it, being here with you, with her. The mention of Vienna made Gabriella's expression soften. She's been humming the same song for 30 minutes. I think she's composing a musical about oatmeal. She's got your ambition, he said. She's got your heart. They both paused, the moment settling around them like a quilt. There was no urgency, no looming deadlines, just warmth and the low hum of a home that belonged to all of them. Later that day, Gabriella walked into her office, a converted sunroom at the back of the house, with arched windows and a view of the garden. Yaron had built the desk himself and surprised her with it one weekend, the drawers lined with velvet and the wood stained to match the beams above. She sat down and opened her laptop, glancing at her calendar. Her assistant had left a note beside it. Confirm final approval for the Midtown Youth Housing Project. She tapped the screen once, then paused. When she'd first started the foundation, she hadn't imagined how deeply personal the work would become. But now, with Yaron and Vienna, it wasn't just about balancing spreadsheets or leveraging influence. It was about making sure no child ever had to walk through life feeling like the world didn't have room for them. Yaron appeared in the doorway, his tool belt slung over one shoulder. You have a delivery, she raised a brow. What kind? He handed her a small, flat box tied with twine. No idea. The return label's handwritten. She opened it carefully. Inside was a watercolor painting Vienna's. A new one, the three of them on a grassy hill, surrounded by sunflowers and stick-figure birds. At the bottom, in giant crayon letters, our family. Gabriella blinked quickly and set the painting on the desk without a word. She drew it this morning, Yaron said. Said it was a surprise for you because you always make her toast the way she likes it. I can't believe how much I needed this, she whispered. She told me to tell you that being your daughter is her favorite thing. Gabriella stood and wrapped her arms around him, her voice muffled against his chest. Thank you for giving me the kind of life I never thought I'd be allowed to have. He held her tighter. You built this life. I just came along to witness it. That evening, the three of them sat on the front steps, eating popsicles and watching the sun dip behind the trees. Vienna leaned against Gabriella's side, her legs dangling off the stone. Are you going to build me a treehouse soon? She asked Yaron. I already drew the plans. It has a slide and a secret door. Gabriella's eyes sparkled. Secret door for emergencies, like if the stuffed animals stage a rebellion. Vienna giggled and Gabriella reached for Yaron's hand. You know, I used to think success looked like ownership. Now I think it looks like this. You still own half the city, he teased. Maybe, she said, but I only want to rule the world if I get to come home to this. As the last of the sunlight faded, fireflies began to blink across the yard. Vienna chased them with her arms outstretched, her laughter bright against the darkening sky. Gabriella rested her head on Yaron's shoulder. You ever think we were running so fast we almost missed each other? She murmured. He kissed the top of her head. We didn't miss. We collided. A few months later, they hosted a block party not in the penthouse, but in the neighborhood where Yaron had first grown up. Folding tables lined the sidewalks, music spilled from speakers, and kids ran barefoot between lawn chairs. Gabriella wore jeans and a white tank top, her hair pulled back, her feet dusty from dancing. An older woman approached her near the grill. You're Gabriella Soren, aren't you? I used to be, she said with a smile. Now I'm just Gabby to most of the people here. The woman nodded slowly. I've seen a lot of people come through this place, not many stick around. Gabriella glanced across the street. Yaron was helping Vienna hang a hand-painted sign above the lemonade stand, our family's lemonade free for smiles. I'm not going anywhere, Gabriella said. Good, the woman replied. We need more like you. As the sun dipped low and the first stars blinked on, Yaron found her again. He handed her a paper cup filled with sweet tea and kissed her wrist. You look like you belong here, he said. I do, she replied. With you, with her. With all of this, they didn't need the chandeliers or the skyline views. They had everything they needed in that moment: bare feet on pavement, warm hands, a child's laughter, and the kind of love that didn't need to be declared in headlines. It was a love built on choice, on action, on the quiet bravery of showing up for each other, every day. And as the music played and Vienna spun in circles with her friends, Gabriella leaned into Yaron's side, her voice soft but certain. This is the best thing I've ever built. He kissed her, slow and sure, with the kind of peace that doesn't need to be spoken. And in the warm dark of that summer night, surrounded by friends and family, and the life they'd built from nothing but a leap into the water, they danced not because they had to, but because they could. They were home. Forever.